Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this Drawdown Georgia Climate Interview Series. I am so excited to have a Drawdown Georgia Climate and Equity Grant recipient organization in partnership with us today. So we're going to jump right in. I'm really excited to have Earl Williams and Katie Chastain from the Thomasville Community Development Corporation. Thank you all so much for being here, Earl and Katie. I'd like to start by asking you both to introduce yourselves and the work the Thomasville Community Development Corporation does in your community.
Okay. My name is Earl Williams. I work for the Thomasville Community Development Corporation. Our mission is to improve the quality of life and wealth creation opportunities for residents of Thomasville's underinvested neighborhoods.
Wonderful.
And I'll just say, Earl is often our community engagement on the ground, figuring out how to connect resources and identify needs in our neighborhoods. My name is Katie Chastain. I'm also with the Thomasville Community Development Corporation. The sides of the house I generally work on are tax credit development house, and we are also standing up a community development loan fund, Invest TVL, to provide access to capital. So those are kind of my areas.
It's interesting, the two people you see on the screen, this is Thomasville Community Development Corporation. We are involved in a LIHTC funded apartment complex that we're taking an old high school and transforming it into low income housing for seniors, about 52 units. We also have an EPA community change grant we just received a couple of weeks ago, and we're taking that same site and dividing it into two different pieces. One piece is the apartment conversion. The other piece is the historic gym from this old historically Black high school. And we're going to take that gym and turn it into a climate resilience center, or what we're seeing right now, community resilience center. And we're excited because all this stuff comes together. When you think about it, it's all about trying to make the planet healthier and trying to make people who live on this planet healthier.
Thank you so much for that introduction, both to yourselves and to your organization. We mentioned to our viewers last time about the Georgia Drawdown Climate Solutions and Equity Grant, which is presented by Georgia Drawdown and a number of amazing philanthropic partners across the state that are committed to climate solutions and equity in Georgia. Congratulations to you all for being a part of the 2025-2026 cohort of that grant. Very exciting. And I remember reviewing your application, and well-deserved. Please tell our audience more about the work that the grant is funding in your community for the Thomasville Community Development Corporation.
One of the things I want to explain is why Dewey City. That's a part of Thomasville that we're focusing on right now. If you look at that grant, that's a part of town that we talk about heavily. And Dewey City was once a thriving part of Thomasville, Georgia. And I believe that in order for Thomasville to continue to thrive, to be a sustainable community, we must restore Dewey City along with other uninvested neighborhoods that are similar to Dewey City. And most of these neighborhoods are on the south and west side of our town.
And yeah, to answer your question, Eriqah, the two pieces of our proposal, one was about plant-based diets and one was for solar energy. The 52-unit apartment complex that Earl mentioned earlier is a low-income housing tax credit project that we're just about to kick off construction for. The really cool part about our partners at Drawdown Georgia is, the funding is awesome, but they're also been connecting us to some resources to help, because this is a first time we've had a major solar project in Thomasville. We need all the expertise and help we can get. This network has really already leaned in to provide some of not just the funding for it, but also the resource network. Really excited about both of those sides of the grant that we received. And like Earl said, it's all about resiliency. And what we're learning in our neighborhood development work is that neighborhood development is resiliency work, and that's what we want for our neighborhoods.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that's really exciting about the ways in which you all have already been connected to the resources that you need. And also, Earl, I heard you mention earlier about the community change grant that you all received. Congratulations on that. So it sounds like there's so much moving forward with the way that you all are doing your work, which is really exciting, especially in these various parts of Georgia. I I want to know, I'm familiar with energy burdens, but some of our audience might not be. So definitely want you to explain that piece of your work and what an energy burden is, or what you all define as an energy burden. And then also want to focus on why energy burdens and the access to fresh fruits and vegetables in Dewey City. What in particular do you see in Dewey City that calls for the need for those two pieces to come together?
One of the things that we're doing is looking at affordable housing. That's one of our objectives. One of the ways that we can make housing more affordable is to reduce that energy burden. And the way we do that is we're actually part of our grant from the EPA, the community. We have a home improvement component. And within this component, we will do massive amounts of weatherization to some of the older houses in our communities, which will reduce the energy burden. And of course, if we can combine that with solar energy, that will be even better. One of the things I'm thinking about moving forward is to try to find money for some of the houses we will be building in our communities to get solar panels put on those homes, to find grants to do that, because we're trying to create affordable housing. The equation is very difficult. We have to buy the land, we have to build a property, prices are going up. And the housing industry is one of the few industries that over the last century, there hasn't really been any productivity enhancements in building a house. So we have to figure out creative ways to do it. And I think one of the creative ways we can do that moving forward is if we can actually add a solar component to the new houses that we're building, and also take the older houses that we have in our neighborhood and make sure that the indoor and outdoor air quality in those neighborhoods is good. And as well as making sure that the houses have sufficient airflow in and out, and that they're warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer through weatherization improvements.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so in addition to the affordability piece of it, the plant-based diet part has been really cool. We're really excited because it was such a natural fit when we saw the Drawdown, Georgia opportunity. There's so much in the historic Dewey City neighborhood. Historically, this neighborhood bartered with each other. There were small farms already in this neighborhood. And when you talk to the older residents that live there, they talk about the chickens they used to trade for the grapefruits from Mr. So-and-so with the collard greens from Miss So-and-so. And so it's really cool to start seeing some of that energy come back and people reinvest in their gardens. There's still a handful of older residents with really great gardens. We just had one of our residents a month or two ago do a huge giveaway of, was it turnip greens, Earl, or collard? I can't remember which greens it was.
Collard greens.
Collard greens to the community. And then we also just recently have one of our board members from the Community Development Corporation opened up a neighborhood market. Historically, there were these Black-owned markets within the neighborhood where community really happened. So we're really excited to see this market come back. And he's been partnering with Black farmers from our surrounding area to carry fresh produce in his market. We need to crack again at the affordability piece. There's a lot of partnerships that we've been building into our program design to support the farmers, the local chefs, the market owner, and neighborhood gardeners, and how they tie into it. So we're pulling in a lot of pieces, but this grant opportunity has given us that opportunity to kind of get a little bit of funding behind it so that we can start to tie together all these pieces that already existed in the neighborhood. And I think that's the beauty, and I feel so fortunate to work next to Earl, because he grew up in these neighborhoods and he knows the assets, and he goes and he finds them, he surfaces them, finding the extra support to then help them thrive, because the elements are there, the diamonds are there. We just need to brush them off a little bit.
I love what you all mentioned there about, definitely about affordable housing, but also about the bartering piece. I think that we see in different communities how it was once common for us to trade as community to help each other. We think about Thomasville and Dewey City, but also places like Auburn Avenue in Atlanta that was a hub, especially for Black folks. At one time, there was always something that people could share with each other. I'm from up north. I've been in the South and in Atlanta for almost 20 years. I have heard stories from my community up there. I think getting back to that and being cognizant of that, not only trading for goods, but also the ways in which that builds community is really important. And I'm really glad that you all, received this grant from Drawdown, Georgia, also because South Georgia, I would, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say a more rural community. We often see that a lot of times these types of grants get centered in the metro. And so to be able to provide and see how these things can benefit the whole of the state, not just the metro, is also really warming my heart to see. I think that's really great and powerful what you all are talking about. And I just wanted to kind of give our audience, if you don't know what energy burden is, really it's about how much of a household income is spent on energy. There are different metrics and statistics for different communities and neighborhoods. When organizations are talking about energy burden, that's typically what they're talking about. And we have seen a swell over the last couple of years of how much people's household incomes are spent on energy and energy usage. We think about people in real time, in real life, thinking about, am I going to buy medicine, or am I going to pay our, Georgia Power bill, or am I going to pay our energy bill? Or are we going to buy groceries, or are we going to pay the Georgia Power bill? And that's a real burden for a lot of communities. To see organizations doing work around that and trying to mitigate that for communities is really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, Eriqah, that was kind of the refrain we were hearing over and over in the neighborhoods that we serve is, people are paying as much in an energy bill as they are either their rent payment or their mortgage payment.
Right.
In Thomasville, we have city-owned utilities. So the city owns the electric. They're coming to the city and saying, you guys are charging so much in electricity. That might be a piece of it, but a bigger piece is often these are older homes for a large part, poorly insulated. So some of the home improvement grant work we're doing, we hope will help mitigate that. Layering on the solar is the other piece. So like Earl said, there's not one solution to it, but overall energy burden is a huge part of people's housing and living costs. When it's sweltering hot outside and you need to run the AC, it really is not a luxury. It is a health issue when you don't have air conditioning or you can't turn it on because it's too expensive to run it. Thank you for bringing up energy burden and defining that, because it is a huge issue in our neighborhoods.
And that's a huge issue in our neighborhoods up here in Atlanta, and y'all live in South Georgia.
It's
hot. It's hot.
I know.
Eriqah, the thing that exacerbates that is also that we live in a ever aging community here. The largest population of people are probably over 60 years of age. And it's getting older, and they're all on fixed incomes. This is a real thing. I really think, renewable energy sources is the way that we need to start thinking more seriously about in our city. And I think that we have city government behind us. They seem to be wanting to cooperate with us on this. I can see so many ways that we can help people get into homes that they couldn't otherwise afford by having some type of solar energy.
And you mentioned rural. I mean, it really is kind of cool that was baked into the grant. And I'm starting to hear more philanthropy really thinking about pushing money outside of the metro area. We know there's huge needs for our urban neighbors, but it's kind of amazing. There's just been a lot of energy in our community in response to this grant, because it's like, it never happens that we get this kind of funding, especially for something like green energy.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of education for our community, or maybe a lot of education. We're learning how to do it. But again, the resources that Drawdown Georgia is bringing down and expertise with the funding has been really remarkable. And yeah, like you said, that, historically we are pretty self-sufficient. And I think rural people in general tend to be pretty self-sufficient because we're removed from the resource networks. If you provide a little bit of help, it seems like it goes a long way. I hope this investment will really pay big dividends, because we've got such a strong, self-sufficient, historic population that's ready to move.
Wonderful. And I'm a city kid through and through. I moved from a very populous city. I'm from Newark, New Jersey, down to Atlanta, Georgia. Especially in doing this work for as long as I've been doing it, which is almost as long as I've been in Atlanta, I have such reverence for the resiliency and the resourcefulness of rural folks, and the work that y'all are doing in your communities to be self-sufficient. I think as much as I love us city kids, a lot of the things are at our fingertips. And as much as I love being from the city, it is. And so being able to work it out is definitely something that rural communities have in a lot of senses down pat. And so I have a lot of reverence and admiration for those folks. And we know, also when we look at maps, especially when you're a metropolitan person, you think that, all these people are on the coasts, right? East Coast and West Coast. But we know that a large part of the United States of America is rural, especially in the South and in the Midwest and in the mountain ranges. And so, we have to, if we're going to have these solutions in climate, we have to make sure that we are authentically including our rural neighbors and siblings. It's really important for us to think about that always in philanthropy and in other resources and programs.
So, Eriqah, what I find interesting is that when you look at America, approximately 20% of our population live in rural areas. 90% of the people who are living in persistent poverty live in rural America. So
thank you.
It's quite a challenge. It really is quite a challenge. But on the other hand, it's an opportunity too. The opportunity to see creative ways to get out of this. And rural people are very resilient. We can adapt.
Right. Absolutely. And if we're doing climate solutions on a whole and we're not including rural communities, then we're not doing them sufficiently. We're not including rural communities in a real and authentic way, and not just in a tick the box way, but authentically. So great. So that's fantastic. What do you see? What do you foresee as the biggest challenges facing you in your work, both for this project, the grant that this project is working on, but in other ways? And how have you and how will you continue to overcome those challenges?
Those are hard questions.
One that we've been working on since we've started, and Earl coming on board, we are a new organization. We're only 3 years old, but trust within our communities is always, I think, in any community development work, the maybe hardest challenge. And we continually remind ourselves and have to lead from behind and follow the energy of the neighborhood. And I think so. Trust is one, and the other I keep mentioning, I think is just the social capital, human capital of we need talent and resources, and so connecting existing talent with the resources to develop that talent, I think is the other maybe challenge that we face.
I agree with Katie on that. I think those are really challenging things. But I think one of the things is the challenge is that we always look at our underinvested communities as problems to be solved, and I think the way we get over that barrier is we look at it as opportunities that we can cultivate. Because we don't, if we look at it as a problem to be solved, we're not going to get anywhere. But if we look at it from a more positive direction, there's something here. We can learn something and provide it to everyone once we fix it here. One of the biggest barriers is just how we see these communities. One of the things that I've been doing is I do community walks where I take people through our neighborhoods or the neighborhoods that have a lot of opportunity. People that come on these walks, they're not really from that community. They're people from outside the community, because I want to help them understand why we think that community is worth it. It's worth an investment. I want them to have an appreciation. So I try to let them understand what the assets are. Like, for example, the one that we keep mentioning, Dewey City. Dewey City was sacred ground for Black people in this area. It was the first place after slavery that Blacks were able to actually own and buy property. There's a creek here that has one little area that's almost like a little pond where Black churches would bring their members to baptize them. We have the first Black high school that was in this county. It's in Dewey City. So all these things are an historical landmark. And so we have so many assets. This community is worth bringing back up. That's one of the challenges. I think the other challenge is that in our communities right now, a lot of times I tell people, some people understand and they don't. What about that community? I said, the problem with that community, the community doesn't exist the way it existed before. We have to figure out how to get people back in that community, not just physically, but mentally and actively working to make the community better. A big challenge is getting more of a sense of community back into those fractured communities. 30% of the people who live in those communities own homes. 70% of the people are renters. And so the challenge there is, my initial knee-jerk reaction is, well, those renters are not part of the community. Well, they actually are. We need to make sure we can lift those people up. What's really good about our home improvement grant that we'll be putting out probably in April is that we not only will help improve houses that people are living in that they own, but we will improve houses that are being rented to folks. And we'll work with the landlord and make sure that whatever investments we make in that house, the rent will not go up for X amount of years.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. I got a lot of thoughts about what you said about people not thinking renters are part of the community. But absolutely,
yeah.
I agree with you 100%. There's so many implications behind that. There's affordable housing. There's so many implications behind the thought process around making sure that everyone who lives there, regardless of whether they're a homeowner, a property owner or not, have what they need to exist and thrive safely and comfortably in their community. That is so powerful what you're saying there. And thank you for that little history lesson on Dewey City. I'm always honored to hear about the towns and areas in the South that have those types of stories. My grandmother is from South Carolina, so I have familiar stories that I've been told as a young kid. I'm always interested to honor and give space for those stories. That's beautiful. We've been talking a lot about challenges. We've been talking a lot about what you all are doing, which is really phenomenal. And I would love to hear anything more that you all would like to share with our audience about what you all are doing. I would love to be one of those people that takes one of those community walks with you, Earl. So I'll take you up on that. But I also want to know from you all in our last and closing questions, what gives you all hope around climate in Georgia? What gives you all hope around the work that you all are doing down there in Thomasville and in Dewey City?
I think we could do that by kind of talking about what we're going to do with the money for the plant-based food diet program. We're taking it from two different perspectives. It's a perspective of a way of introducing to a part of our community, and we'll be dealing with basically seniors that go to a daytime senior center. We're talking about feeding about 40 to 50 people 4 times a week for lunch. Okay, this is not a controlled study by no means. So what we will be doing a couple of things, and I'll go through it in just a second. This is another way that we can build trust in the community, showing that we're trying to take care of the community. Okay. What's interesting about what we're doing is we're trying to introduce plant-based diets to this whole senior population. And at the same time, we're running a business model with this program. So we're trying to prove to different people in the community how the community can work within itself and create its own, circular. We're taking food. We have a grocery store that Katie previously mentioned. There's a local grocery store that just reopened by one of our board members in this targeted community. This grocery store will buy food or produce from local Black farmers. Okay? And he will sell the produce to a local guy who lives in the neighborhood who's a food service / caterer, and he will pull together these plant-based meals. Okay? We have another guy that's going to take the plant-based meals from his kitchen to the senior center so they can have lunch. Mm-hmm. We have all of these entrepreneurs within this community. And not only that, we have a public health person that will be consulting and helping us out, and someone that does health diagnostic testing. She will be helping us out with that as well. And so what's interesting about all these people that we have, they all look like me, and they all went through a program we have called Spark Entrepreneurs Program. It's a local nonprofit that does training for local entrepreneurs in the minority community. Each person, each thing I mentioned, each point in that circle is a part of that entrepreneurial circle. And all these folks were, produced by the same program. So to me, we have two things going on. We're going to introduce healthier lifestyles to seniors in our community, and we teaching entrepreneurs how to work together and keep the money within their community. Okay. So, but before I shut up, I got to tell you one story. So this is true. It's about plant-based diet. A couple of my friends wanted me to go to a local buffet place. I don't really like buffet places for the most part. And so we're there. They had their wives, and I brought my wife. We're eating. And one of the wives asked the waitress, "So those beans, where did they come from?" And she said, "A can." So, it puts me back to plant-based diets, sourcing it locally.
Yes.
That's what we're doing. So that's the beauty of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Just really source it locally. It's healthier for people, and it's also healthier for our local.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think what he's showing is it's the individuals that make us excited. You know, like each of those individual entrepreneurs, it's incredible. I mean, we threw it out on the internet. Here's an opportunity. If you want to be involved, let us know. These incredible entrepreneurs all reached back out and said, yeah, I do plant-based food. I have a market. I'm a farmer. I do diagnostics. I'd like to be a part of this. And so I think that's what's been really exciting is people have come out of the woodwork with their talents and with their businesses to be a part of it. So super grateful for Drawdown Georgia and this opportunity. I think it really is going to do great stuff in our neighborhoods.
We'll be back.
And we hope you all come on a walk with Earl because it really is entertaining. You'll hear all the good stories.
I'm gonna do it.
Come on, Eric, it's fun.
I love stuff like that.
No, we used to have a sign, a billboard that said Thomasville, Georgia. It's worth the trip.
It's worth your trip.
Got it.
And we have really good restaurants here that sell plant-based food. So.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for your story, both about the work you're doing with this grant and with the Thomasville Community Development Corporation, but also about your town and about Dewey City. I think hearing about these things is why we are doing this interview series. We want to introduce people to different parts of the great state of Georgia and different communities who are doing things under completely impossible circumstances in some instances. Some folks have a lot of resources, some folks have very little, but everyone is doing the best they can with what they have. We're loving bringing these stories to this audience. Thank you all. Thank you, Earl. Thank you, Katie, for being with me today, talking about the great work you are doing and sharing the passion that you have for your community. And thank you all for joining us once again for this series. I hope you'll come back for our next guest. We'll see everybody next time. Thanks, Earl and Katie.
Thanks, Eriqah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay.